I remember describing it to a therapist one time. I feel like I'm looking at the world through a GoPro camera. You know, when you're playing a first person video game like Battlefield or something like that, where you're in the first person, I was like, I feel like I'm in the first person. And I remember the therapist just going, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been to the place where I'm like, this absolutely, there is no way to get out of this. But it's taken me 33 years to get to a point where I feel I've enough knowledge behind me to talk about it.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with Paddy Ross, 33 years old, originally from Wexford, Ireland. Paddy first experienced depersonalization derealization disorder when he was 17 years old during a very stressful period in school. He was brought to doctors at the time, but like so many people, he found that nobody had any real answers for what he was feeling. Thankfully, the symptoms faded naturally, a very common experience for people who develop DPDR as teenagers. However, Paddy's DPDR returned suddenly at age 26, shortly after he moved to Dublin for work. Paddy tried everything he could think of to cope: yoga classes, lifestyle changes, and all the usual things people reach for when they don't yet understand the true nature of DPDR, but nothing got to the root of the problem. Then earlier this year, while on a work trip in the United States, Paddy's DPDR came back harder than ever. When he returned home to Ireland, he remembers thinking, "This is it. There's no hope here." That episode took about 4 months to recover from, but it also opened the door to finally understanding what was really happening. Paddy now knows with complete certainty that DPDR is 100% anxiety-based, and that insight became the key to breaking the cycle and recovering. And today, Paddy is here with us to share his journey, the early episodes, the setbacks, the breakthroughs, and how he ultimately recovered after years of dealing with DPDR on and off. Paddy, you're very welcome to the channel. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi Sean, how are you? Nice to be here. Like I said to you earlier, it's a bit surreal. I feel like I've watched so many hours of the channel, and here I am with you in person. So yeah, great to be here. Great to be here.
That's great. I'm delighted the channel has been useful, and it's a pleasure to have you on the channel. Thanks for being here and for sharing your story. Paddy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so yeah, my name is Paddy. I'm 33 years old. I work in the tech industry at the moment. I've been in sales for years now at this point. So yeah, I'm an avid outdoorsman. I have two boats. I spend a lot of time on the water. You'll often find me on in Loughree in the center of Ireland. I spend a lot of time out on the lakes. I'm a big man for the camping. I love going out camping. And yeah, I'm into all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's me. Like, I live here now in Kildare in Ireland, but I'm originally from Wexford. And yeah, um, I've experienced a lot of anxiety in my 33 years. But I feel I'm getting to a place now where I can maybe give back and help other people out and give them some level of solace.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And would I be correct in saying that you've just got a new house as well?
Yes, we purchased a house, myself and my girlfriend in July. So we moved in. We didn't purchase in July. We purchased it last year, but we moved in July. So it's been great. I finally have my own shed because I'm a big shed man. You'll find me in the shed, more than you'll find me in the house. And yeah, it's been great since July. We're getting settled in now, so delighted.
Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with DPDR and how did it start for you? So you were quite young when you first experienced it.
Yeah. Look, Sean, I guess looking back on my life, looking back on it now retrospectively, I can see now that I was an anxious kid which is crazy because I'm in sales and I'll speak to there's nobody that I won't go and speak to, or like I've no fear of anything like that. I think people would have me down as a person who would. I've had many people say to me, you have anxiety. Yeah, like I've had so many people say that to me, and like they're like, You're having this on here, like you don't have anxiety." Um, but look, well, going back on my life, I've been a highly anxious individual since I was a kid. You know, looking back on it now, um, I was a very hyperactive child. Um, and I wasn't a kid who was getting into trouble for just being vindictive or anything like that, but I was getting into trouble all the time because I just didn't want to do the stuff other kids were doing. I wanted to run off and go and do crazy things like climb massive trees and all that kind of stuff, which was just, that's just kind of the way that I was, right? And I guess, because of that, my parents were like, "Oh, well, he has ADHD or something like that. Like, we better get him like checked out or whatever like that, right?" Um, and I was, yeah, like, so I was kind of going way back here, like, I was brought like kind of to like, I guess, child psychologists and stuff like that to kind of go, does he have like an attention disorder, or does he have ADHD or whatever like that? Presumably, I do have ADHD, which is fair enough. I think that that's a fairly common occurrence these days in society, right? But what happened at the time was back in the 90s, like, um, you know, it was like the diagnosing of stuff was much more rudimentary, and they weren't really quite there yet, especially in Ireland with stuff. So I initially got given a bipolar disorder um diagnosis when I was young, which ultimately is not correct because I absolutely don't have bipolar, right? But that's what was handed down at the time, and that was kind of what was ran with, right? Now, I know this doesn't necessarily relate directly to DPDR, but it kind of all plays into the one kind of ballpark, right? Um, so yeah, I got kind of quote unquote labeled with this, right? And certain sorts of medications and all were kind of given that alongside, right? Which ultimately weren't needed. And then effectively, look, I went through school, everything like that. Wasn't a great big fan of school. Who is, right? But but got through it, did my leaving cert, all that kind of stuff. But it was around my leaving cert time when I first had my very first experience of DPDR. That was the first time I ever got what I now know to be DPDR. And I remember very clearly what happened. I remember it was a random normal morning. Woke up. My mom used to drive us to school. Me and I have two brothers, so we'd be going to school. And I remember I was doing the leaving cert, and I it was definitely the year of the leaving cert. And what happened was,
And
I remember,
just for international viewers, is it's the end of school exam that we have here in Ireland.
yeah, yeah, it's our final one before we go to college or whatever like that. And I went down. I remember going out into the back garden. I remember clearly. I went out into the back garden, and I was going to get like fire logs or fill the coal bucket or something like that. And I remember just looking up at the trees and going, like, those trees look really weird. It looks like they're made. It looks like they're drawn or like they're a cartoon or something like that. Or it looks like they just look funny to me. They don't. They don't. I couldn't really kind of tell the size or the shape of them or how far they were away, and I was kind of like, everything just feels a bit weird. I'm just suddenly ultra aware of everything that's going on around me, and I remember just having an unmerciful panic attack. Like, I just went into a complete panic, and I started crying. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I was like, this is just surreal. And I remember my mom came out because obviously she could see I was distressed, and I just remember saying, I don't feel like anything is real. I just feel like everything around me is in I described it as being in a cartoon. Like, I was like, everything feels like it's a cartoon. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I need to go. I need help here. I need to go to a doctor or something like that. I think at that point, I don't think that day we went and did it. I think I was able to squash it that day. And I think I went to school, and I think I kind of just got over it naturally. Something, I think my mom kind of said, "Law, you're just like, it's leaving cert stress. Like, you just go into school or something, see how you get on. If you want to come out later on, just let me know, and we'll get you out or whatever like that." After that, I can't really remember what happened after that, but I know that that was my first experience of it. Um, and kind of what spiraled on from there became kind of the the usual path that everybody tends to take. So I started to go to doctors, started to try and work out what was going on with me, blah blah. At that point, I hadn't considered that I because as you'll find out as we go on here, I went through the rigor. I've schizophrenia. I've some uncurable mental health disorder. At that point in time, I kind of handed a lot of it off to my parents. I was kind of like, I was still under that kind of comfort of, being at home, and like, you're a teenager, and sort of life just comes along and just kind of brushes stuff away. So you kind of just forget about it naturally because you're too busy being a teenager. So it kind of just disappeared naturally back then, right? So I just kind of forgot about it. I finished the Leaving Cert. I went to college. I did a degree in business. I went through college, never experienced DP or DR in college or anything like that. Just went through it normally. Had the usual anxieties. I was definitely very anxious, but I went through college and everything was grand. And came out and uh, worked for a couple of years. I went through various different things. I did a bit of construction for a while before I got into the career that I'm in now. And yeah, so then like what? So like I'll pause there for a minute. Like maybe there's something that you wanted to ask around that portion. But yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing of, when you're going through it at that age. I mean, look, going through it at any age and not knowing what it is terrifying. And even the description of, feeling like this isn't real, the trees don't look real, I feel like I'm in a cartoon. And knowing, like hearing yourself say those thoughts as well. And I remember saying things like that to myself, and also thinking like, but that can't be right. Like that's not something a sane person would say.
Yeah.
So then thinking, oh, well, this must be me going crazy. This is what going crazy feels like. And until you have a better label to put on it, that becomes the story that happened, And I know, and something that happens to a lot of people as well. And I wonder, did you experience this as well, Paddy? But, you know, people can often experience it, especially when they're younger, and then move away from it. So they'll, as you said, go to college, or you just get distracted, especially just because when we're younger, our attention spans aren't
Mm,
as wide, and we're less kind of aware of our inner um processes as well.
yeah. Yeah.
So we're more able to kind of let them go. But there is the fear that remains, that says like, well, I still don't know what that was. Like, did I briefly go crazy there for a while? Or why did I say I was in a cartoon? Like, what was that, I know
Yeah.
it's gone, okay, thank God, but like, fingers crossed it doesn't come back,
Yeah.
which which kind of sets you up then for an even more intense encounter if you do have a panic attack or anxiety later on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and also, but it is good to kind of just remember as well that when you described it as feeling ultra aware of everything, it's a really good description of it, and that's exactly what it is. It's just where your
Well,
body goes into fight or flight response. You're having a panic attack, but you're super super aware of what's happening around you, because your brain is acting as if
yeah.
there's a wild animal behind that tree. It's going to come out and eat you. So your brain is just like hyper fixated aware, but you're like, okay, but I'm in I know I'm in Wexford, like in the back garden. So like I know there's no grizzly bear here. So what's the crack? Like, why do I feel like this? So then you notice the intensity of the noticing, and then that turns into its own feedback loop. But yeah, but yeah,
You just continue on. That's the thing. Like, it's just you're it's almost worse being in a safe environment and having normal human feelings, which I call them, right? Which I panic attack, which is a very normal anxiety is a hugely normal thing to experience, right? It's almost worse being in an environment where you're not under threat and having that. It's worse because it is so desperately uncomfortable. But later in the call, I'll talk about where I'm at kind of now. But yeah, you're completely right. Life just got in the way as a teenager. You just naturally forget about stuff. You're going and meeting girls or boys or whatever like that, and you're going to college, and then you've got all these things on. You've got mates and lads are buying cars, first cars, and all that. So you just you kind of naturally forget about it, which actually, ironically, is actually the way that you move past DPDR. uh, right? But like when you're younger, it's just easier to do because you're kind of handing the responsibility of your mental health off to other people anyway, because you're just a kid, like, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And so just so I'm clear as well, Paddy, so you would have been about maybe 17, 18 years old, that 16? Okay.
and yeah, I was quite young doing the leaving cert, so yeah, yeah, I think I turned 17 in the March, and I think that I was 17. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I like when you said, it's worse when you're in a safe environment when it happens. Because what I very often would say to people, they'll list out their, I'm doing a Zoom coaching session with them. People will list out their symptoms, and what I say to them is, okay, I know these feel stressful, but like, if you described everything you just described to me in the context of you were being chased through the woods by a grizzly bear, and your heart was beating, and your muscles were tense, and your pupils were dilated, and your thoughts were racing, and you had intense feelings of DP and DR, you wouldn't give us a second thought.
No.
No, no, yeah, right. No, nobody ever got home after being chased by a grizzly bear and said, "I had the worst panic attack while that bear was chasing me." The forest, the trees felt very unreal. Like, it's like, no, there was a bear chasing you, so you don't, because there's a reason for it.
There is. Well, we're designed we're designed like human beings are designed to feel anxiety, right? And it's integral to everything we do on a day. Like if you didn't experience any anxiety, you wouldn't eat, you wouldn't drink, you wouldn't go and pay your bills, buy clothes. Like you wouldn't do any of that because everything like that is like it's just it's there for a purpose. Your job isn't to get rid of anxiety because you're at nothing trying to get rid of anxiety. Now, anxiety can flare up and it can get a little bit out of control, but it's never. When I say it's never a bad, yes, it's a bad thing for people who get severe OCD or something like that, right? Yes, absolutely. At that point, it becomes something that needs to be managed, but it's never something that can't be managed. It just might take you a little bit longer to get to that point. It's taken me years to understand anxiety, and I'm absolutely sure that I haven't got it all figured out yet. But it's taken me 33 years to get to a point where I feel I've enough knowledge behind me to talk about it.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. It's I always like to think of it as there's anxiety, which is like day-to-day anxiety, okay? So relationship anxiety, financial anxiety, but it's
Yeah.
more even just stress. It's just stress, right? So work stress, relationship stress, that type of anxiety is absolutely normal. There is, unless you're like a hermit living on a rock somewhere, like, you're going to experience this type of stress, right? It's part of being human. It builds character, it strengthens us, and it, makes us more able to navigate the world in
Yeah.
a healthy way, right? Okay, great. Then there's fight or flight anxiety, which, as we were saying earlier, is the anxiety that you feel when you're in danger.
Yeah.
And that type of anxiety, man, it's a different set of symptoms. Now they're fundamentally the same thing, but it's much higher. It's much more intense, and those symptoms include feelings of panic, feelings of depersonalization, derealization, intense heart palpitations, etc. And those are extremely useful if you are in a life or death situation. But you don't need those. You don't need fight or flight anxiety when you're worried about paying the mortgage, right?
Oh,
But you could be stressed out about it, but you don't need to be. You don't need, your body doesn't need to be reacting as if the house is on
no.
fire, right?
And
So yeah,
one of the things that I would say, that because I absolutely understand what people go through when they're feeling these feelings. There is nobody who understands it better. And what I would say is, don't beat yourself up because you can't get rid of a feeling, right? And that's one thing that the one thing that I've learned only in the last year is that I would kick myself around the place because I couldn't get rid of this fight or flight symptom. Like, why am I feeling this? This is I shouldn't be feeling this. I should be relaxed. I should be calm. Blah, blah. And you turn it in because there's nowhere to point. Or there's nowhere to point to blame, right? So you point it back in at yourself, right? If you're feeling hyper anxious, and it doesn't matter, I don't care how bad you feel, right? Just allow yourself to feel that way. Look, if you're going to feel that way, just feel that way, right? And just you gotta understand deep down inside yourself, no matter how disconnected, disassociated you feel, you've got to understand that you have to have this little box inside of you where you go, I know all of this is a chemical reaction, because that's what it is. We're just chemicals. That's all we are. Like, that's not all we are, but a lot of what makes up how we feel is chemical reactions in the body. And you just go, this is cortisol. This is a flush of cortisol and adrenaline. That's all this is. That's all this will ever be. It'll never be anything else other than this. No matter, like, it doesn't matter what you think it is. The reality is that it's never going to be any more than what it is right now, you know? Because we get very good at trusting how we think and feel about things. And just because we feel something is the case doesn't mean that that's the reality of the situation. Feelings are they're not very good guides to go by. You can't really trust them. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
the thing is saying, I would kick myself when I couldn't get rid of the feeling is really interesting, because I certainly would have had that too. And what that, so the way that our brains determine whether a thought or feeling is important or not is the degree to which we focus on it.
Yeah.
And when we have a feeling or a thought that we get frustrated by and we feel we can't get rid of, and we kick ourselves that we can't get rid of it, we're just telling our brains that that feeling is so important that it warrants you kicking yourself about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's important, we better keep it going, So we inadvertently get into this cycle of frustration, pushback, and research, and then wondering why the feeling isn't going away.
And the thing on that about that is, if you're thinking if you're thinking like, because when you're in a DPDR episode, nothing is more important than than what's going on with you, the DPDR, right? That's all you can think about, right? And that's fine. Just think about it. If you have to think about it, well, then just think about it, right? And but just know that I know you often say on your channel, there's nobody. You still feel like there isn't anybody who had it as severe as what you did. But I would wager that am I'm an equal, like, in terms of that, right? I would wager that, and I've been to the place where I'm like, this absolutely There is no way to get out of this, right? And one of the big ones is the state specific memory. That is the one that you got to really like. This is fun. Last night before I came on the channel here this morning, I remember saying to myself, am I going to be able to, like, how am I going to tell Sean, like, am I going to give a good interview here? Because, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to recall it all now, right? Because, like, the state specific, like, if you had to come to me in February, I could tell you everything, right? I'm like, Jesus, like, am I going to be able to remember what, like, am I going to be able to remember, like, how bad this was? Because that is the state specific memory, because it's, you know, have you ever have you ever been like maybe with have you ever had a partner in the past that you broke up with, and you kind of at the time you thought like, Jesus, I'm never going to love anybody ever again on your first breakup, you know? But of course you do move on, and then you do yeah, you know, you find another love or whatever like that. And it's the same thing with state specific memory. It's so important to you just because it's important to you then. Do you know what I mean? But like, I'm totally different than what I was in February. I was catatonic in February, could barely speak. I was wondering where the words were coming out, like, where are the words coming from? You know, how am I formulating words? Like, what are words? How is my brain putting connections together to create syllables? And, you know, why are we spinning on a rock at 17,000 miles an hour? And what the hell, you know, like, what the hell is going on? Like, how is this all existing? Cats and dogs, man, forget about it. Like, forget about it. Like, I was like, get that dog away from me. I was like, the poor dog. I would go down home, man, to Wexford. We've two collies, and the poor dogs, man. I would just be like, get away from me. I don't even want to even consider what you might be. Like, just move away, like, you know. And the poor dog was just looking at me, going like, what the hell is wrong with this lad? Like,
It's so, yeah, it's really funny, like when we go through it, and the dog and cats thing, it feels so weird. It's so common. It's so common. It's a, like, you know, and again, as we said at the start of the interview, I think before we started the interview, Paddy were saying that, like, you know, it's the way that we make these conditions easier is by normalizing them, and by understanding that, like, even the symptoms, even when you say, like, okay, I was freaked out by the dog, and you say that, Jesus, that can't be right. Like, what kind of condition is this? I'm freaked out by dogs. Like, why am I thinking about the dog's consciousness? Like, you know, then you realize that, like, this is actually quite common.
right.
Because if you're feeling disconnected from yourself and the world around you, your thoughts are racing. You're thinking thoughts about philosophy and about, for me, it was like the size of the universe and consciousness. And then, of course, you're going to look at a dog or a cat, and you're just going to be, well, what are they thinking? Like, what do you think
Yeah.
is it, like, you know?
And this, the one thing, the big one I always hear is the one about looking up at the sky, and that's another one. And oh my God, floaters! Don't even get me started on floaters. I floaters as well. It's all coming back to me now.
um,
Yeah, yeah, go on.
the thing you mentioned, you know, the talk about kind of like, would I be able to remember it? And the way and it's a really good point. And this, because state specific memory is a huge part of this, which, and for those of our viewers not, who don't know what that is, state specific memory just refers to this phenomenon in psychology whereby when you're in a specific mental state, it is difficult to imagine not being in that state. So so this is why people with depression will struggle to even imagine a state where they never, someone with depression might think, I was always depressed and I'll always be depressed, even though they know, like, I know that, like, 5 years ago I wasn't depressed, but I can't even imagine it now. And it's almost like the language of that state is gone. It's like a branch of mathematics trying to describe a different branch of mathematics. It can only do so much, but it can't actually get there. But the beauty, and it can feel very frustrating. But the beauty of it is that it works the other way. So that when you come out of it, and you feel happy again, you're just like, Jesus, was it even that bad? Like, you know, it wasn't that bad. It was all right. Like, you know, I'm sure I'd probably be fine. Like, you know, but the way I like to think of it is that, like, I the time in my life where I had chronic depersonalization, derealization, and I literally couldn't. go outside for a while. I couldn't drive my car. I couldn't walk to the bath. Like I had to
Oh,
avoid mirrors.
driving the car is another one, yeah. That
Oh
you
my God.
just reminded me of that. Oh my God, driving a car was, I remember your stories about the cliff things. Like that's the one that jumps out to me. Like I remember I listened to that 3 or 4 times, if not more. I've just gone, I'm gonna get in a car, I'm gonna drive down the road, and it's just like, what if I just drive into a wall? Like for no reason. Like what if I can't control myself and I just drive into a wall? You know what I mean? Or what if I just horrible intrusive thoughts like that, that they have no basis in reality. It's just like you get obsessed with these ideas of like you said, what if I just drive down to the cliff and just drive off of it? You know, like you're never gonna act on that, but like it's you know, if you had thoughts like that and you didn't respond viscerally to those thoughts, then I would urge you to go and get checked. Do you know what I mean? Like then you actually do need to go and get seen to, right? Because you've something going on then. Because the people who have those thoughts and they're not viscerally impacted by thoughts like that, um, though a lot of those people are probably in jail because they've done something terrible, because they don't experience normal human feelings like why would I be thinking that? Jesus, don't ever let me think about that again. Um, and unfortunately, like the thing about it is when you're quote unquote normal, there isn't so much thing as normal, but like quote unquote when you're normal, like you're supposed to respond like that, to talk like that. You're supposed like if you have thoughts like the thoughts that come with DPDR, you're not supposed to go, Jesus, these are lovely thoughts. I hope I have loads of these today. You know. So you gotta cut yourself a bit of slack. You know. It's very hard to do it, but you've got to cut yourself a bit of slack and go, you know, like it's all right for me to be annoyed at the fact that I'm having these, or completely distressed at the fact that I'm having random weird thoughts like this, because by the way, um, there's post like a lot of, like I'm not a woman naturally, but like there's a lot of I've read a lot on like post partum, like a lot of post like what word I'm looking for here, like when a woman has a baby. It was on the radio the other day actually about how they get a lot of thoughts like this for no reason in postpartum, which is like, what if I just drop the baby, or what if I just leave the baby outside, or something like that, to that effect, right? And um these are normal, like these thoughts come in very lots of different forms, if you get me. So the point I'm trying to get at is that it is much, much more common than what you're believing it is right now to have these kind of thoughts.
Yeah. The way I like to think of them is the thoughts themselves, they're just words. They're just words. So when I had the thought that says, "Oh, I can't be trusted to get into my car because I'll lose control over the car, and I'll drive off a cliff. I'll hit someone, I'll crash into a crowd, I'll drive off a cliff, and I'll die."
Yeah.
So I've just said those words, right? They're just words. They have I would never do that, right? But
Yeah.
they have no bearing in reality. But if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, I would be having a nuclear meltdown now, just having heard those words, because I said those words aloud, right?
Yeah.
But what's the difference between me then and me now is that back then, my anxiety levels, my fight or flight anxiety was at 10 out of 10. So I was, all of these like catastrophic thoughts that were coming up, I was latching onto them going, "Oh, what does that mean? Does that mean something? Where is this feeling of danger coming from? Maybe it's from my thoughts themselves." Like, so I was latching onto everything. And then as I recovered, and this, as you mentioned earlier, Patty, ultra awareness of everything, including your own thoughts, the ultra awareness part of anxiety also fades away. So you stop becoming so hyper aware and jumping onto your own thoughts. So then you can have like a thought, like, geez, crash the car, like, but then you just get back to listen to the podcast you're listening to, like, or watching the replay of Troy Parrott's goal. Like, you've better things to do, like, because it's just a thought. We have thousands and thousands of thoughts a day, and it's just, the like the
Yeah.
Buddhist kind of idea of, like, it's a river, or there's bubbles floating to the surface, and you can either get in and start trying to grab the bubbles, or you can sit by and watch them go past and go, yeah, that's my thought process. They're just none of them have any intrinsic power. It's the degree it's the degree to which we focus on them that kind of charges them, and we do that in yeah, and when we get rid of the anxiety, we allow them to be words again, and they're harmless, and we can let them
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
And for the people who are viewing right now, like, because I understand that it's easy to say these things, and you might think, you know, when you're right in the middle of this right now, if that's where you are, and you're watching the channel, and you know, and you're having these kinds of thoughts, what I would say to you is that, um, it's almost impossible to think that I'll never be able to not think about, like, I'll never be able to escape this cycle, right? But I absolutely promise you that you will have, like, if you keep following the manual, and you keep following Sean's book, that what will happen is you will eventually get, the whole goal here is to get bored of this. That is actually the goal, like, is to get bored of DPDR. You will eventually reach a point where you're like, I'm actually just kind of bored of this now. You know what I mean? It becomes sort of like yesterday's news a little bit, and and that kind of leads me on, like, to, I had like you said, I was going to say I had the second episode then when I was about 26, when I moved to Dublin. I just remember one evening, I remember specifically, I think I was lying in bed, I was just watching YouTube or something like that. Uh, Very normal day, nothing going on that was out of the ordinary. And I just remember I had a lend of a friend, because I'm a guitarist as well. So I had a lend of my mate's guitar at the time. It was actually the Dean shaped Flying V guitar. So and I was in the corner of the room. And I just remember looking over, and I remember specifically so clearly going, I didn't know at the time this was going to kick off months of, like, DPDR. I just looked at him and went, what is a guitar? Like, do you know what I mean? And I remember going, what actually is that? I know what it is, but what really is it? It like, and I remember going, and I just remembered starting to feel I remember starting to feel this intense feeling of panic, and yeah, like, I just freaked out. I just completely freaked out. I had a massive panic attack, and the cycle kicked off again, and I remember it just turning into, like, visceral DPDR that lasted quite a while, actually. And I did lots of different things. I remember my parents have been instrumental in, I've a very supportive family, I have a great family. Um, you know, and they were instrumental in that, they came up. We in Ireland, we have these things called aware groups. And by the way, I still attend the aware. I think the aware is brilliant. I think that, going to these types of groups to share your story, like I'm doing today, it's not always about helping yourself. It's about other people will take solace from it as well.
And just what is an aware group for our international viewers, Paddy?
So an aware group it's like a group that you would meet, say, once a week, where people, basically, it's a group where you go and people will just share their week. And, for people who experience anxiety, people with depression, though, there as well. Various different people go for different reasons. But that's what an aware group is. It's kind of a round table group, kind of like an AA meeting for international viewers, but for mental health, right? And I went to the aware groups. I remember going to yoga. I was like, yeah, I'm just, and this is the state specific memory. I could barely recall that I had DPDR for the leaving cert. I could barely recall it, right? So it was like amnesia. It was like it was like it all happened all over again, and I was just like couldn't remember that it had happened before. And I remember going to yoga classes, going like like trying to figure out, and of course I health anxiety. Like it's a whole. I could talk to you for a week about the amount of health anxiety that I've had in my life. I was like, yeah, there's something wrong with my heart. There's something wrong with my brain. I went for brain scans. I went for more MRIs. I could have wallpaper with the amount of MRI scans that I had went and gone. You know, and got it all. Everything clear. Bit of high blood pressure maybe here and there, right? But brain fine, body fine, heart fine, everything fine. Just went through it all. Just couldn't get to the end of it, and yeah. Um, And again, I just sat that one out again, and eventually it just dissipated and went. The one thing I forgot to mention, Sean, was, and you often talk about this as well, is the weed. I had an incredibly poor weed experience a couple of years before that. I was about 22, and I did engage in the smoking of some marijuana, and I had an ultra panic attack. Like, ended up in hospital, wasn't good. Nothing was wrong. I just had a major panic attack, right? Now, did that feed into, panic and all that sort of thing? And yeah, I attributed a lot of it back to that. Oh, it must have been, I must have done something terrible to my brain, that like irreparable damage to my brain that nobody's ever going to be able to fix. All untrue. All completely untrue. Um, so after the one that I had when I was 26, the episode that I had, um, I I I just waited that one out as well. I slogged it out basically. I continued to be, I continued to go to work and function and everything like that. But I did just slog it out at that point as well. So that was sort of what I would call the middle episode. And there was that one. So I paused for a minute on that one because there's a lot of information there.
Yeah, yeah. So you've gone for all these scans. I mean, was the word and spoken to different professionals and such, were the words that was did you ever come across an explanation of this might just be anxiety?
No,
No.
no, no. This is the problem, and I was talking to my mom earlier about this as well, because before we had the interview, I was kind of trying to recall, because she's been with me for a lot of the journey up until last couple of years, where I'm grand now. I can manage myself, but like I remember talking to my mom and going, I don't blame you for like bringing me to try and get me sorted out, because you've no idea, like you have no idea how to like approach this kind of thing, because nobody's ever trained you. Because if you haven't had DP or DR, it's very difficult to explain to somebody who hasn't had it what it's like, right? And I said, don't blame me for that. But what but the people that I do blame, I said, is I blame the doctors who, at a point when I needed more information, just wouldn't give it to me, or just couldn't give it to me, or didn't know what it was. Because it's like, it's your only job to know what this is. That's the only thing that you're there to do, right? Is to understand what this is, right? Um, and yeah, like the amount of doctors that I went to, and I was just like, you know, especially for that middle episode, I remember going down and like the GP just going, here's antidepressants. Look, go home and have a glass of water and have a good night's sleep, and sure, you'll be grand. And it's like, well, I need you to tell me a little bit more than that. Like, do you know what I mean? Because, you know what I mean? I like, I'm going to need something else here. Like, but they just, it's not, I don't believe that it's they don't want to help you. I believe it's they just don't understand it. And, I believe if they did know more about this and there was more awareness, they would absolutely be able to help you with this. Do you know what I mean? But a lot of doctors will just say, you're just really anxious at the moment. Have you got a lot of stress going on? And you need to slow down. You need to do X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. And that's all correct information. The problem is we need a little bit more than that to help us understand DPDR.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The awareness of it is growing, but it's not nearly where it should be. And it is an incredibly frustrating experience to speak to a doctor, and when they say it's just anxiety, and the one of the most frustrating aspects of it is that it's actually correct. It's actually correct, but it's not. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the start of the information that you need. So when I heard this is just anxiety first, I was thinking to myself, like, no, it isn't. Like, I feel like I'm not here. Like, I feel like I've been disconnected from reality. Like, I felt anxiety before, and this is not it. So when I was sent home, I was thinking to myself, like, well, you clearly haven't diagnosed the thing that's actually wrong with me. And also, you don't know what I'm describing. So Jesus Christ, where am I? Like, what do I, am I going to be in the medical textbooks? Like, because like you, again, you're the source of the knowledge for this. I'm describing symptoms that are, that are horrifying, and you're just kind of saying it's anxiety. Now, I do, I do also feel that it is, as the awareness of it grows, and I am speaking to more and more people these days who are going into their doctors, and the doctors are recognizing it, which is really, really good to hear. But back in the 90s, 2000s, like, it wasn't,
No,
it wasn't there. It wasn't
the,
there at all.
no, the awareness just wasn't there. And like the one that, like the one thing to mention is that a lot of the time, what we'll say, like, when someone says to you, you're not actually that special, like, we'll take it as an insult. But for a person with DPDR, it's like a dream come true. And let me tell you, you're not special. There's nothing special about you, like that. And when I say that, what I mean is that there's nothing that you're experiencing right now that hasn't been experienced before. You're not going insane. You're not losing your mind. Um, memory, talk about memory. I forget about memory. Like when you're going through DPI, like you're not going to be able to have the same sort of memory and the same cognitive, um, you know, like faculty at the moment. And that's just because your brain is designed to switch these things off when you're going through hyper anxiety and stuff like that. Um, I've had medication. My wife found medication useful. Personally, I don't really think so. There has been some medications that have helped. Uh, you know, but everybody has a different experience, and I know we don't mention specific medications and stuff like that. Um, but like, if you need sometimes you need to be reminded what it is to feel not anxious, just to help you get to a point where you're like, oh yeah, I remember what it feels like now. A doctor might be able to help you with that. I know personally this year I did a very quick 10-day course of a certain medication just to pull me right back down to baseline, to give me a fighting chance of under, like, just not feeling anxious for a period of time. And it was very helpful because it reminded me, but obviously you need to consult with the correct medical authority. Don't go self-medicating for this.
No, no, no. Certainly, do only do so under the supervision of your doctor. I always like to say to people, look, you will recover from this. This is harmless. It's scary as it is. It's harmless and temporary. You will recover. Um, as part of your recovery, you have a toolkit of tools available to you, and all these different techniques that are there. They're proven to work for anxiety-based conditions. You will recover. One of the tools you have.
You've had it, by the way. If you've had this 10 years, if you've had this 10 minutes, It doesn't like I there's been a few people that come to memory on your channel who are longer term sufferers, or experiencers of this. And if you've had this 10, 15 years, it doesn't matter. Like you can recover the same as somebody who's had it for 10 days. You might be a bit more frustrated. That doesn't mean that you can't recover from it. One thing that you talk about a lot, Sean, is the forums. And one thing I have to say is I never went onto a forum, which is very unusual, right? I never went to the forums to read about this, because I just knew that on the forums that people they just weren't going to give you the answers that you were looking for. So you got to get off the forums. If you're on the forums as well, you got to get off the forums. They're you might get the very odd person who gives some useful information, but the problem is that you're opening yourself up to 80% more negative feedback, you know, and the 20% of the help that you might get is not worth scrolling on the forums, Um, leads me on to your manual, actually, and how if you want me to talk about how I kind of got onto the manual.
Yeah, let's just uh rewind a quick just for a couple of minutes, Patty. So just so I'm clear on the timeline. So the first bout that you had of DPDR, so you would have been about 16, right? And
Yes.
it lasted for how long?
I'm going to say it could have been anywhere from 8 to 12 months at that time. Yeah.
Okay, wait, let's just say about around a year. And then the second bout, which you were just describing, what age were you?
26.
26. And how long did that one last?
I'm going to say it lasted about a year as well.
A year as well. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
About as well. I
yeah,
just struggle to let go of it very easily, and that's
yeah.
you know,
Of course. I mean, it's I mean, sometimes we're lucky enough to be able to, like, again, as I talk about in the book, like most people will experience this. 75% of people will experience DPDR at some point in their lives, but for the vast majority of those people, it occurs. They may notice it, but then just
yeah,
get back to doing what they were doing. Um, in the same way that most people will notice their heart beating a bit quickly and they just get back to work. But some people will notice their heart beating and go, "Oh Christ, I'm having a heart attack. I'm going to die," and then start
yeah,
panicking. And some people will notice the feeling of disconnection and go, "What the hell is going on? Am I going crazy?" And then start obsessing about it. Like, it's just
yeah.
there's a couple that go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like I would like to say that the older generation are almost better at dealing with DPDR, but then not necessarily. And the reason for that is, along with your manual, which your manual was pivotal, in my understanding, it is absolutely pivotal. The one other thing that was really helpful was, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning it, you can cut out if you want, is the Claire Weeks book. Um, Claire Weeks, I found to be quite refreshing as well for anybody who is looking to pair something with your manual. And the reason for that is because it was written and spoken about in a time where I feel with mental health stuff these days, books are very careful about making sure that they're sensitive to you, and making sure that they don't upset you in any way, shape, or form, right? But the Claire Week stuff is good because her book in particular, or her audio book, she's I think she calls it like the person with the nervously ill person, which is a really funny way of putting it. But um, so when I say people have been experiencing this for years, they have, like, this is nothing new. This is not a new phenomenon. Like, this is not something that has just arisen in the last 20 years. Like, this has been around forever, you know?
Yeah. The example I always like to give is I think of so you know what agoraphobia is, right?
Yeah.
Right. So agoraphobia has been around forever, right? So but imagine someone in the imagine an Irish farmer in the 1920s on the Beara Peninsula, right? And he walks outside one day and he gets a panic attack, and suddenly the sky feels too big, and the ocean sounds too loud, and he's like, "What the hell?" And he has to step back inside the cottage, and he can't do anything. He has to keep the curtains closed, and when his wife and kids come over to him, he feels like they're crowding him. He feels that freaks him out even more, right? Um, so he hops on a bus and he goes to a doctor in Killarney or Cork, right? And the doctor in Killarney and Cork have never heard of the word agoraphobia because it's the 1920s, right? And they say to him, well, it just sounds like your nervous system is acting up, or it just sounds like it's anxiety, right? Um, but for that farmer, the farmer is saying to himself, but I know what anxiety is. Like, I've had anxiety before. I feel like I can't go outside. I feel like I feel like the sky is too bright and too big, like. And for that farmer, until he gets the explanation of what agoraphobia is, it's going to feel like he's gone crazy. That's what it's going to feel like. Yeah, this is one of the core tenets of cognitive behavioral therapy is putting labels on things, and because when you put the correct label on something, there's a diagnosis for it, there's a name for it, it's common, I know it's scary, but it's harmless and temporary. It starts to disempower. It starts to drain the power away from it. It doesn't switch it off immediately, but it just starts to drain the power away from it. Um, and it is the kind of the swings and roundabouts thing of having the access to the internet. Like, so you can find that explanation relatively quickly by just searching for the symptoms on Google. That's miraculous. That's fantastic. But then the other side is that you start going into the forums and you can ask questions on the forums for the rest of your life and
Oh, yeah.
keep getting into interactions and discussions and pushbacks and whatever. Um, so, hopefully we'll get to a place very soon where the awareness of DPDR is where the awareness of agoraphobia is today, where people
Yeah.
walk into the doctor's office, they describe the symptoms, the doctor says, that's called DPDR, it's a symptom of anxiety. Okay, it's scary, but it's harmless and temporary. People get this, recover from it all the time. Here's the steps to start to recover, and just put them on the right path to recovery. um as opposed to being in this kind of like limbo space of like, I don't know what this is. I heard it's anxiety, but it doesn't feel like anxiety, so I have to go researching it ad infinitum, which is not a pleasant place to be in.
No, because look, when you're on the forums, you look with the greatest will in the world. I'm sure the people on the forums are great people. I'm sure they're very good. Like, but you don't know what stage they're at in their journey. You know what I mean? You don't know where they're at. Like, and you're just it's sort of like it's sort of like uncensored. It's sort of like uncensored drugs, and it's like self-medicating effectively, because you're taking in a concoction of information from people at different journeys, different parts of their journey, and while there might be a helpful comment here or there, you're getting people who are just pretty much kind of can unfortunately be at a point where they're kind of saying, "Well, just give up on this. Like you're never going to get out of this." And I'm in this 15 years, and I've had it going, whatever like that. Um, so but what I would say to you is that, like, when you're in that sort of a space, if you don't feel like you're never going to get rid of this, then you don't have DPDR. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what it's going to make you feel like. You know what I mean?
The
And
nature of anxiety is to jump to catastrophic conclusions, which in an evolutionary sense is extremely useful because it can make you think that branch that you heard breaking in the distance is a bear, so you got to start running. So in that situation, it could save your life, but it's not useful when when you apply it, when you apply that same catastrophic type of thinking onto your own experience with anxiety and with your recovery process, because then you think, well, maybe there's other people recovered, but not me. I'm going to be part of.
you're going to be the
Yeah, I've got a different type of DPDR. That means that I can't recover. So Paddy, so just so you had it at 16, you had it for a year. At 26, you had it for a year. And at no point in those 2 years did you come across the term depersonalization. Is that correct? Had you ever found that explanation?
I think maybe I I actually, ironically, I think I saw one of your videos in fleeting. You were kind of, or it was early on your chat, like it was a long time ago. I think it was one of your really early videos. I think, and you popped up because I think I had been Googling. I think when I had my second episode, I think I started to break into the idea of the term DPDR, but a doctor didn't tell that to me. I think it was your channel told it to me, right? At that point in time, I didn't download your manual or anything like that. I don't even know if it was out. It may or may not have been, but like I remember seeing your video and kind of watched it, and I actually ended up, I still see the same doctor that I've been seeing since I was 26. He's an Indian guy. Won't name his name here, but um he's been really useful as well. But I think that uh yeah, so that was that. It wasn't explained to me what the PDR was in great detail by anybody. Your channel has, you explained to me what the PDR was better than anybody that I've come across in the medical industry, right? Um, and then that leads on to the recent episode
Yeah,
that
yeah.
right. So
So yeah, so you got out of it the second bout, and then was that like, okay, so it's I've gotten out of it again. I still don't quite know why this happened, but fingers crossed this doesn't hit me again. So
yeah,
so then you're about maybe 27 when you get out of it the second time. Yeah. So then what age are you when the next bout happens?
yeah. So by the way, just a caveat, when I quote unquote got out of these episodes, I wasn't just a jolly, like, anxious free guy. Like, I had, like, I dealt with anxiety forever. And by the way, after today, I'm going to deal with anxiety again. Do you know what I mean? So just to caveat that, you don't reach nirvana where, you're suddenly like high on opioids all the time or anything like that. But I got out of it, and the most recent one was, um looking back on it now, it actually probably started to rear its head probably November of last year. And but it really laid into me. I went on a work trip in February to the west coast of the USA, kind of go every year for work. And I just got absolutely, it just knocked me out cold. Um And I remember building up to the trip. I remember considering whether I would even go on this trip this time around, because I wasn't feeling great as it was moving up to the trip, the work trip. And I remember speaking to, we had we had like free resource alignment to like therapists and work, which I used. Kind of was like, look, should I go on this trip? And she was like, look, if you feel like, if you feel you don't want to go on this trip, don't put yourself under pressure. But I'm a type of person, I push myself. I don't like to go, I gave up. I hate giving up. It's just the way I am. I'm very competitive that way, and I don't allow myself to give up. So I was like, no, that's not the correct thing to do. The correct thing isn't to fold in under this and sit at home. I'm going on this trip, whether I hate it or not. I'm going on this trip. That's the end of the story. Um, So I forced myself onto the trip. And I remember taking off the tarmac in Dublin, and I just remember instantly going, I shouldn't have done this. Like, you know what I mean? Going, like, I remember from the second I left the tarmac going, this is going to be horrific, you know? And got out there and just got sick while I was out there, in terms of actually I got a really bad flu when I got to Vegas. And I remember going, not only was I was already run down as it was now, and it was just this total feeling of isolation going, I'm so far away from home. Like, you know, I just like I was like, if I want to get home, if I want to get back to the people I love and the people I know, like I've got easily a 20-hour journey ahead of me by the time I go through airports and everything like that. It's so long. I have to figure out all of this stuff, passports and numbers and all that. Like and then it just started to cave in on me. Like, and after the work trip, I went to Los Angeles to visit a friend of mine, and I was staying with him, and I I've since told him like I'm really sorry about how I was when I came to visit you, like because I just couldn't do anything. I lay in the bed for a week, like at my mate's house, like, and I barely ate. I couldn't go out for to eat anything. I ordered stuff to the house. I was like, I couldn't drink coffee. Coffee just seemed so unfamiliar to me. Like, and I love coffee, and there's something you always talk about is coffee. It seemed so unfamiliar. I was like, I couldn't even fathom drinking. I couldn't even. It made me feel sick when I thought about eating or drinking. Um, I lost 12 pounds on that trip. 12 pounds in the space of lost like a pound a day, basically. Um, I came back. I came back to Ireland after that trip. I remember being in Boston, and they delayed our flight for 8 hours to get home, and I actually remember going, I can't do this. I actually can't wait here to get on this plane to go home. I did eventually get home, but it all really, when I got home, it really just, I was not in good shape when I got home. Now I continue going through work, and I continue to be successful in work and stuff like that somehow, but I was not in a good place. I went back down home. I didn't want to be left alone. I wanted constant reassurance. Like, I just wanted the world to stop. And like, I didn't want anybody, I wanted people to be around me all the time, the people that I felt comfortable with. Um, and my youngest brother, like, was really instrumental in kind of helping me get out of, like, he helped me a lot at the time because, like, my youngest brother's 10 years younger than me. And we just, all we could do is he was just like, look, just go to the sauna with me, and we'll just go to the sauna, and then we'll head home. We'll get a bit of food, and we'll watch Criminal Minds is something that I watched back to back. It was the only thing I could watch, and he'd stay and watch it with me in the evenings. Like, we'd just sit there watching Criminal Minds for hours, and yeah, and I just slowly crept through that. It was so hard to get through it, and that's when I came across. I remember I ended up back on your channel again. I ended up watching the interviews, and I just went, you know what, I'm just going to buy the manual. I was like, I don't care if the manual is 10 grand, I'm just going to buy it. Do you know what I mean? And sorry lads, Sean's going to put his prices up now. Yeah. Uh, no, but I ended up, I was like, no, I'm going to buy the manual. I don't really care how much it costs. And I just bought the manual, and I just listened to it back to back every day, non-stop, on repeat. Um, and yeah, like, look, it took until, it was just a caveat that when I was in LA, by the way, the sun was shining. I was in my mate's back garden with a swimming pool. There was tropical birds everywhere. Life was brilliant. And I was sitting by the pool in the back garden, literally in despair, just catatonic, going, what is wrong? Like, I'm sitting here in LA, everything is great. My mate has a home gym, he has a swimming pool. I've got money in my pocket, got food on the table, and I was like, what the hell is wrong with me here? Like, do you know what I mean? Um, and that's it. And then I came home and I slogged through, and like I said, um, it's taken me to kind of mid this year to kind of get to any sort of a place of, feeling ready to talk about it. And I was just like, I remember I read the man, and I was like, look, I debated coming on here saying, would I be stigmatized for coming on this because I'm kind of, in the professional realm or whatever like that. And then I just kind of went, you know what? No. I was like, if somebody's going to benefit from here, like I benefited from a lot of people's stories. So, you know, it, like if I was coming on here talking about how I was a cancer survivor, touch wood, there would be no stigma attached to it. Do you know what I mean? So why should there be any stigma attached to somebody coming on and talking about DPDR?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The thing of being in that situation where like you're consciously, like life is good. Like I'm okay. Like, okay, I'm healthy physically. I'm in a safe place. There's nothing wrong. I'm not in a war zone. And yet I'm in a state of absolute despair. Like, and for me, it was like just being stricken with these existential thoughts over and over again and not being able to. For me, it was like I went to a wedding in Scotland. Yeah,
I remember.
yeah. Not long after I developed the condition, and certainly before I had gotten any sort of explanation or was getting a handle on it. And I'm there in St Andrews, north of Edinburgh, surrounded by family and friends, having the absolute crack, celebration of the family, and I was in another dimension. Like I was just like thinking to myself, have I died? Like I felt so I couldn't, and also I kept retreating to the room that we were staying in
Yes.
and closing the curtains and just like lying there and hoping to God someone wasn't going to knock on the door, like, and then, but okay, but we have to go to dinner later on, so I have to get up, put the clothes on, go to dinner, try and maybe drink a pint, try to put food into me. I couldn't look. I was a sick man. I lost a crazy amount of weight as well. At one point I had to get protein shakes just to just to put something into my body because I had lost this. I was like a skeleton. I lost. I mean, well, okay, I wasn't at death's door or anything like, but I mean, I lost. I mean, I'm not a particularly like large man, like, but I had lost a good at least a stone and a half, maybe 2 stone. Like, it was wild. Like, yeah, it was and very scary because you see yourself kind of wasting away like that as well, and you think like. I thought I developed some sort of like kind of musculature disease or like stomach cancer or something, very scary thing to go through.
I remember you mentioning like the way, like feeling like you have a body wasting disease, and that's exactly the way I would have felt about it as well. One of the other symptoms that I would have experienced, and it's so funny as we talk, more and more stuff is coming back to me on how I would have described DPDR. I remember describing it to a therapist one time who just, I remember going in and going, I feel like I'm looking at the world through a GoPro camera. I feel like my head is a GoPro, right? And I feel like, when you're playing a first person video game like Battlefield or something like that, where you're in the first person, I was like, I feel like I'm in the first person. And I remember the therapist just going, I don't know what you're talking about. Like pretty much going, I literally don't understand what this is. Like in kind of almost like, okay. And like kind of like that. Like, and like, it's so funny looking back on it now because I go like, I was describing DPDR very accurately, but the only way I could tie it to anything tangible was to go, it feels like GoPro footage. I feel like my life is GoPro footage, you know? And like weddings, like anything like that was just, I can I can almost connect to your exact experience of just going, I hope nobody knocks on the door. Like, I don't, like, I can't do this. Like, I can't go down and be in front of people. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Not even to mind like mustering up the ability to have like a relaxed conversation with someone, just like shooting the breeze, having the crack, like, just like meeting new people, and you're just like and your brain is acting as if, okay, I'm trying to have a conversation, but there's a truck driving at me from this direction. So I'll try to stay focused on the conversation. It's hard because that truck's going to hit me and it's getting closer. And then you're aware of like, I would be in conversations with people and I was aware I couldn't focus on the conversation at all. And then thinking to myself, no, they know that something is wrong. What did they think of me? And just trying to kind of extricate yourself from it, like, and oh my God, yeah, it's
When you haven't eaten when you haven't eaten properly in a week, and you pile a bunch of anxiety on top of all that. I mean, you can't expect yourself to feel any other way, right? I mean, you have to give yourself a break here, right? You can't expect you to feel any other way. At the moment, I don't assign the same level of danger and catastrophe to it that I would have previously.
yeah, it's it's something we've spoken about just before the call as well, Paddy. But it's important to remember that when we recover from an anxiety-based condition, it doesn't mean that you're not ever going to experience stress again. Like it's normal. It's natural to experience that. The example I always like to give is like if somebody is obsessed with like heart palpitations and thinking that they're going to have a heart attack and they hyper aware of it and they can't focus. And eventually they understand what it is. They get an explanation, maybe speak to a therapist, and then they understand that their heart beating more quickly does not necessarily mean they're going to drop dead of a heart attack, right? And it's a huge catastrophic interpretation. But does that mean that that person will never experience heart palpitations again? They will. Of course, like of course they're going to. Yeah, of course they're going to experience it from time to time. Everybody does. The brief feelings of heart palpitations in of themselves are not the issue. It's the catastrophic reaction to it that causes it to become an issue. And this is the engine that's behind all anxiety-based conditions, is focusing on what are normal temporary symptoms of anxiety that almost everyone experiences from time to time, but then focusing on it, catastrophizing that something is terribly wrong, and then creating a feedback loop between the anxiety and the symptom that cause it to spin off, and then checking on it consistently.
Or yeah, check. Like you assign it a value, like, and the problem is you just assign it the wrong value. You know, you assign it a value that's a much more it's much more high on the urgency list than what it actually what in reality it actually is, right? Your job right now, if you're going through this in the middle of this, is just to at least know that you've assigned it the wrong value. If you walk away with anything else from this, just understand that you've a value assigned to this that doesn't need to be assigned to it.
Yeah, yeah. So once you found out that it was called depersonalization, Paddy, and you had found the explanation, what did it feel like when you started to make progress with it? You started to see some results. Was that a slow process, or was there any sudden moments involved in it? What was that like?
Very, very gradual, and almost unnoticeable. Barely noticed that I was recovering, really. Barely noticed that I was recovering until I was, quote unquote, kind of back to a stable, sort of a stable footing. And and this is kind of the great thing about recovery, is it happens so gradually. That you should barely know what's happening. Actually, you know, you should barely be aware that you're recovering, because it's the tiny things that compile over months, like that, and that's what recovery is. Like, recovery isn't like, you won't wake up one morning and go, is DPDR still there? And then you go, oh, it's gone. Brilliant. I'm recovered. Like, that's not recovery. Like, that's not recovering. Like, somebody breaks your leg, like, you're not going to wake up, and you don't wake up every day to check, like, oh, is the bone fused back together yet, It happens like in tiny, like microscopic bones, like structures are growing back there. And that's the same as recovering from quote unquote mental health condition, you know? It'll happen very like you don't wake up with a common cold and go, am I sniffling a little bit less than I was yesterday? Or like, how many times have I blown my nose today? Like, you don't do that. You're kind of like, yeah, I had a cold. I had a cold a month ago there. Yeah, I'm better now. I'm grand now. You know. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And with all anxiety-based conditions, essentially what you're doing is you're changing a habit of behavior and thinking from one to another. And the way that all habits change is incrementally and gradually. And if you can expect that and allow it to happen, you give yourself a lot more grace with it. You give yourself a lot more ease with it. It's because what what because the onset of these conditions can feel so sudden. What we can often expect is that we that the offset of it or the getting rid of it will be as sudden. So for me, I remember thinking, well, there has to be a power switch for this somewhere. There's a power button somewhere for this. And if I do enough research or if I find the correct combination of things that click into place and just like this hit me out of nowhere, it'll disappear out of nowhere. But I just had to find there's a secret button here somewhere, right?
yeah.
And again, trying to find the secret button, trying some techniques, waking up the next morning and being like, is it gone? Is it gone yet? And no, it's not gone. So now I feel demoralized and sad and lie in bed for half an hour and then drag myself through another 24 hours of DPDR.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got to a point where, as you said earlier, um, I got bored of it. Yeah,
Okay.
I got bored. I got maybe a better word for what I had was I got frustrated with it.
That's
I went for, I got sick of it.
Yeah.
I went from being petrified, like, as you said, like catatonic. I couldn't move. And I got to a point over a long enough period of time where I just said to myself, like, I wouldn't mind going to watch a movie instead of spending another day sitting here thinking about the consciousness of the dog. Do you know
Exactly.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I think I've better things to do with my life
Yeah. Yeah.
than lie here and think about the size of the universe for an
Yeah.
hour and panic. Why don't I go and watch a movie?
Yeah.
Okay, and now I go to watch the movie, so I get into my car and I feel quite nervous, but Jesus Christ, I'm not going to go back to bed. I'm going to watch the movie. And you just push yourself through it.
Yep.
You stop from like you stop expecting you stop waiting for the moment when the anxiety is gone to give yourself the permission to go and watch the movie. You say, if anxiety I'm going to watch the movie. If anxiety wants to come with me and sit on my shoulder and tap my shoulder, fine, fine. But I'm going to watch the movie because I'm sick
Yeah.
of this. You
Exactly
know?
like that. That like the brain heals. Like the brain will start to what it'll start to do is eventually, if you just follow, like, follow the steps in the manual. It doesn't matter how long you've had this, by the way. The brain will eventually just it will learn on a subconscious level that, like, you know like, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, like, you can keep thinking about this if you want for forever, right? But like the brain will learn that, oh, we've been here before. We've taught all these things. We've done all these, and nothing's actually after happening, right? Like nothing's actually happening. Like I'm still here. I went through, like I've gone through all of the thoughts possible, and what actually happened? Literally nothing,
Yeah.
right? I never ended up on a. My biggest fear was, oh, I'm going to end up in a psych ward, and that's going to be the end. That's going to be it for me. I'm like, they're going to come along with the van. I'm in it, and that'll be it. I'll be in a padded room, and my family will be coming to visit me once a month, and that'll be it. I'll have no quality of life. That that's absolute nonsense. It never happened. It never took place. I never once ever ended up anywhere remotely within reach of a psych ward. Do you know what I mean? So, like I said, your brain will like the whole goal of this is to get bored of it, right? And you won't do that by telling your brain to get bored of it. The only way you'll do that is just to get busy. You know what I mean? Just get busy with something. It doesn't matter what it is. If you have to go and join a pottery class, just go and do. I don't care how uncomfortable it is. If it's the worst feeling in the world, just go to the pottery class or go to the join pickleball or like you know what I mean. I know people have very different situations. For me, it was I got stuck in. I bought the house and then after getting like launched into that, right? Um, Other people have different situations, but just find something. You know what I mean? There's going to be something in your area which you can go and join, and just go and do it. You're going to hate doing it. It's going to be the worst feeling ever. But that's exactly what you need to do, and I promise you, in time, you will like this will, and there's so many people around you. You're walking past people experiencing this every day.
It's our brains love goals and challenges, love them. And what happens with anxiety and DPDR is that it feels like it's this whole labyrinth that is opened out in front of you, and this obstacle course and maze. And in order to get back to your day-to-day life, you have to go through this maze and complete it and get through all of the obstacles, right? And all of the trapdoors and booby traps and all the rest of it. And then you keep going and it just never ends. It never ends. And then you kind of realize that like it's not healthy for me to keep focusing all of my intelligence and creativity on this, because as you said, like it doesn't go anywhere. Like there's no big realization at the end of it. There's no big boss to fight. It's just like this kind of I describe it as like it's like a washing machine,
It is.
and we keep throwing stuff into it thinking, oh, maybe this will stop us, like, and it just keeps going. And after a while you just say, okay, I can either spend another year like trying to stop this washing machine, or I can just let it be there and go and do something else. The the example that's used in acceptance and commitment therapy is the idea of the tug of war. So you're in a tug of war with anxiety, and you say to yourself, I have to beat it, I have to defeat anxiety. And every day you're back and forth, back and forth. And some days you make progress, others you don't. And acceptance and commitment therapy says, okay, well, how about this? How about drop the rope, walk away, and do something else? And when you hear that first, and my response when I heard that type of stuff first was like, what? I'm sorry, what do you mean walk away from this? Like, this is my whole life. And also I'm having like existential thoughts that I feel are going to like break my brain. I
Yeah.
can't just like drop those and walk away. And accepting commitment therapy says like, but you can. And what if the reason that you're in this tug of war with anxiety is because you're thinking of anxiety that you need to be something in a tug of war with? You don't. Anxiety is your friend. It's trying to protect you. It just feels frightening because it's doing it at the wrong time. But when you categorize it as like an enemy or a villain or an adversary, you stay in this kind of back and forth with it for as long as you keep doing that. So when you drop it, walk away and go to the pottery class, and it feels so weird to do that because you're like, but I need to get back into the battle. And you're like, no, you don't.
Okay.
Do
Yeah.
do the pottery class, and then your brain takes all your creativity and intelligence and it goes on to pottery, and your brain goes, okay, this is actually kind of cool. you know,
Yeah. And
I don't have to beat anxiety into submission. I can just do something else, and anxiety.
step at it, like one step at a time as well. It's just don't expect too much from your inputs, like at the start. Don't expect to go to the cinema or the pottery class and come home and go, Jesus, it's all over now. Like, and I'm grand now. It's just not how you work. Like, yeah, like you're not going to. You're That's not the way this works. Like, it's a gradual process, and you have to stick with it. Like you have to keep. I get anxiety, Sean, every single time I'm going. I do a lot of fishing. I go out, I do a lot of boating. I'm out on boats a lot, and every time I go out to do something like that, like I'm hit with a wave of what ifs, what if, what if, what if, what if, right? And I just know that that's coming now, but it doesn't mean anything to me anymore because I just go, that's grand. Oh, yeah, camping. I do a lot of camping with my mates. It's one of our. I have a really good group of mates. We do a lot of camping. One of the things I always say is, oh, if I go camping on a camping trip now, how am I going to feel when I get there? Blah, right. I still get all of that. Like I'm not at a point where I jump out of bed in the morning and skip down the road ready for the day. Like I still get all of the stuff that comes along with anxiety. The difference is that like I said before, I just know it's going to come. Like, but like what happens is it's like the first 20 minutes of getting out of bed. We all hate the first 20 minutes, but after that, like it starts to fade away. And if you just have the 20-minute rule, go, okay, I'm feeling terrible. Before I give up on what I'm about to do, I'm going to give it 20 minutes, half an hour, see how I feel.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah. Something I've always found interesting is so I have a pretty good morning routine I have had for a long time. I get up, take I'll take a cold shower, and I'll meditation, do a few other bits and pieces, right? Yeah, but so if I do that and I do my morning routine, I am guaranteed to have a good day.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, right? So Monday to Friday, that's what I do, and I always feel like I'm on top of my work and things are good, right? And if I don't do that, things kind of fall behind a bit, or you're just the day is just it feels like you're chasing the day a bit, right? So if I do that every morning, guaranteed a good day. Every single morning when I wake up, I'm like, oh, Jesus, not this again. Every single morning, it's like and I have to put the alarm across the room, so I have to get out of bed, and I'm up, and now I'm up, and now I'm washing my teeth, now so you're on the move, right? But it's the thing of like you almost through the habit of doing it, you kind of take the choice away from your brain. Because if my brain had the choice, it'd be like, just chill out, just and throw on the radio, lie in bed. Sure, it's only another hour. Like, sure, you can take it easy today. And it's like, no, 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 you can't. You train yourself, and your brain gets more used to these things. But um, it's but discipline is always involved to some extent, but that's not a bad thing. And then that kind of percolates out through the rest of your life as well. So it's only positive.
Yeah, and you're going to have ups and down times in that as well. And the thing about it is, having the odd lie-in, look, nothing wrong with it, right? Like having the odd day where you don't get out of bed until whenever, right? That's fine. Like, like the big thing for me, man, is I'm an avid fisherman. I'm a big fisherman, and part of that is 5:30 in the morning starts, like, right? And like they're tough, but like it's like you, once you're up, once you're gone past that 20-minute mark, right? No matter how bad you're feeling, um, you'd be surprised how much progress you'll have made within the hour. So you're like, an hour ago I was in bed and I was ruminating, and now I'm out in the air. Like I'm already set up. I have the coffee in the hand or whatever like that, and like I'm already moving here. I'm already. Do you know what I mean? You're already moving along, right? And the rumination is 10 times harder than the moving along. Like ironically, the rumination is 100 times worse than just getting moving. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, so Paddy, how was the DP manual helpful in your recovery?
Steve Emmanuel, Sean, it was look, instrumental this year in my recovery. It'll be used again. I have no doubt. Um, it's very firmly stored in a safe place, ready to be used if I ever want to go over it again. Uh, yeah, look, Sean, I look, I couldn't have made do without you this year. I genuinely couldn't have made it. Just don't. I don't think I would have. I believe I may have recovered, but I don't think I'd be. I don't think I'd be where I am or able to come on the channel here today and talk about it if the manual wasn't there. I listened to the manual on repeat. I go back now to listen to the manual almost kind of to laugh a little bit at the DPDR. Uh, so I listen to it and I go, wow, I was listening to this at the start of the year, like clinging on to it like it was the only thing that was going to keep me alive. But now I can listen to it in a different light. And look, there may come a time again where I go through hard time and I have to listen to it and it becomes important to me again. Like when I say important to me, it becomes like something I need to really focus down and listen to again. But yeah, look, the DP manual, for anybody who's thinking about picking it up, get it. It's worth having it. It's worth having it there. If you're somebody who experiences anxiety, you should have this in your toolkit. And the thing is, once you have it, you have it. And you know what I mean? You can go back and refer to it and use it. I think so. I think it's something like 100 quid or something like that. It's what would you get for 100 quid? You know, like, so yeah. Anybody who has the means to pick it up, I think they should definitely go and do that.
That's great. I'm so happy it was helpful in your recovery. Yeah, it's wild that this thing that I wrote because there was no guidance at the time back in 2005 to 2007. There's still helping people. I mean, I've obviously made a lot of changes in the meantime to it, but and it makes me so happy that it's still helping people today. Paddy, I got one more question for you. Um, there's going to be people watching this interview who may be going through something very similar to what you went through. Maybe who've had like bouts with the condition at different times of their lives, going through it a second time or a third time even. Maybe the circumstances of what led to it may be quite similar to yours. If you're speaking to those people, or if you could go back and speak to yourself when you were going through this back in your mid-20s or even as a teenager, what would your advice be?
Yeah, it's a really good question. My advice, I'd say, to the younger version of myself that would have been going through things like this is to first of all is to back yourself, right? You got to kind of back yourself a little bit here, right? Um, and it's cliche, but you actually are a lot stronger than what you think that you are, and you don't need as much help as what you're thinking that you need right now, right? Um, you know, part of what I would have had is I needed constant reassurance, and you don't need as much reassurance as what you believe that you think that you need. And that's probably the main piece of advice that I would give to myself. And the other piece of advice is I've done a lot of great things. I've had a date. I've had a really successful career. Thank God. Touch wood. Um, the one thing I would say is, uh, no matter how bad you think things are, how bad you're feeling, you gotta get up and go. You gotta get up and do stuff, right? You have to get up and do. You have to get up and move. You know, um, that's one thing I like. I remember there was times in college where I had, in fairness to my parents, saying, "Just come home out of it, give up." You know, not their fault, but like, it's not suiting you, blah blah. And I remember specifically in college going, if I give up on this, I give up on everything. That's my rule in life. Like, it's, if you give up on one thing, you've given up on everything, right? And I remember saying that to my dad. I remember going, my dad, I call him my dad, like 'cause that's the way we say it in Ireland. But I remember he said, come home from college at the time, and I said, no. I said, that, and because I know that that's not the right thing to do, and whether it kills me, I'm sticking this out. And that's the piece of advice I give to everybody, is that, like, just stick with this, be tenacious, don't give up, and just keep moving, and back yourself. Like, you have to back yourself. You will get this in the bag. Um, but just don't fold under anxiety. You know what I mean?
That's excellent advice. Paddy, I've enjoyed speaking to you so much, man. I could talk to you all day. But thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with the channel. I know there's going to be people watching this who find it extremely inspirational and helpful. Um, and yeah, it's been great to speak to you, man. And thank you again for being so candid and for going through all the ups and downs of it. It's been really, really great to chat with you, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.